Thought precedes success. Nothing more, nothing less. Most people believe that success comes from action, that it comes after the movement, after the effort. After much insistence, this belief is ancient. It's repeated. It is accepted. And yet, she never explained why some people progress with less movement, while others wear themselves out without going anywhere. Because success doesn't come from action. It responds to the thought that precedes it. That's the law. Before any result, there is an internal state. Before any recognition, there's a mental state. Before any progress can be made, there needs to be coherence or a lack thereof. The world doesn't react to what you do. It responds to what you uphold while you do it. Action without alignment doesn't build anything. She simply reveals it. It reveals conflict. It reveals haste. It reveals insecurity. Misaligned thinking always leaks out. Even when the action seems right, you can say the right words. You can perform the correct movements. You can follow all the visible steps. If the thinking that supports this is unstable, the result will not last. Because thought is the soil, and nothing grows in unstable soil. The mind that precedes success is silent, not because it's empty, but because it's decided. She doesn't debate her own identity all the time. She doesn't renegotiate value with every stimulus. She doesn't seek external validation to exist. She remains. And to endure is the true sign of power. Most people live in anticipation, anticipating mistakes, anticipating losses, anticipating rejection. This state creates fragmented thinking, and fragmented thinking creates excessive action. Acting forcefully, in this case, is not strength. It's an attempt at compensation. Aligned thinking doesn't need to compensate. He doesn't accelerate. He doesn't force it. He cannot prove himself. He simply holds on. And what is supported creates gravity. Gravity attracts. Not through effort, by attendance. Success recognizes presence before it recognizes movement. It's always been this way. The thinking that precedes success is coherent. Not perfect. Consistent. He doesn't change his emotional direction every day. He doesn't contradict himself in silence while trying to move forward aloud. He chooses an inner line and stays on it. Even when there is discomfort. Even when there is no immediate response. Even when the environment tests you. This permanence builds trust. Trust is not something you ask of the world. It's something the world feels when you don't abandon yourself. A misaligned mind abandons itself all the time. When you ignore your own limits. When you accept less than you know you can afford. When you act against your own intuition in order not to lose something external. Each internal abandonment weakens the signal. And weak signals don't guarantee success. Thinking correctly is not the same as thinking positively. Thinking correctly means not betraying yourself. It's about not saying yes when your body is saying no. It's about not moving forward out of fear while trying to appear courageous. It's about not accelerating when the axle demands stability. Aligned thinking respects one's own rhythm. Internal rhythm is more important than external speed. Those who run without a solid foundation arrive exhausted. Whoever holds an axle up arrives in one piece. Success doesn't choose the fastest. Choose the most stable ones. This is invisible to those who live on the surface. But it's obvious to anyone who observes closely. People who maintain success over long periods do not live in a state of urgency. They don't act out of fear of losing. They move forward based on a clear understanding of who they are. This clarity is born in thought, not as an idea, as a state. A state in which thought, emotion, and expectation walk hand in hand. When this happens, the nervous system relaxes. And a relaxed nervous system sustains more responsibility, more impact, more visibility. Even a tense mind desires prosperity. But he can't stand it. She resorts to sabotage. Too much control. Afraid of losing. Aligned thinking creates capability. Capacity to receive without collapsing. This changes everything. You don't need to chase after opportunities. You need to stop kicking them out. And opportunities are lost whenever there is internal contradiction. Whenever you think one thing and feel another. Whenever you want to move forward, but you protect yourself emotionally. Whenever someone acts without internally justifying their actions, the world feels it. Not as a judgment, as a field reading. Misaligned thinking emits noise. Aligned thinking emits clarity, and clarity always finds an answer. The thought process that precedes success is simple. Not because it's superficial, but why isn't it divided? He does not carry multiple competing narratives. He doesn't live in constant justification. He knows what he's standing for and what doesn't hold up. This creates clear boundaries. Clear boundaries create respect. Respect creates space. Space allows for expansion. None of this is forced. None of this is taught. It is lived. Aligned thinking also redefines time. A confused mind is either behind or ahead of schedule, always trying to achieve something, or to run away from something. An aligned mind is present, not through carelessness, but because of maturity. She knows that success isn't built on anxiety. It organizes itself coherently. This coherence is felt in the body, in breathing, in posture. You don't need to act. You don't need to look like that. You are. And that changes your presence. Presence changes how people respond. Change as opportunities arise. It changes the type of invitation that appears. No more invitations based on urgency, but invitations based on trust. The mindset that precedes success doesn't dwell on excessive discussion. He decides. Making decisions internally means resolving invisible conflicts. Invisible conflicts drain energy. Drained energy does not build abundance. When thoughts align, energy focuses. Concentration creates power. Power creates impact. Impact creates return. Sustained returns create prosperity, not as an event, as a state. True success isn't a peak, it's a stable line. And stable lines of thought only exist when thinking is stable. Unstable thinking creates highs and lows. Aligned thinking creates continuity. Continuity is rare. And everything that is rare is valued. The aura of success is born from this continuity, not inspired moments, but from sustainable states. You don't need to think big. You need to think coherently. Thinking big while experiencing internal conflict leads to collapse. Coherent thinking creates natural growth. This growth doesn't attract much attention at first, but it remains. And what remains builds. When thought precedes success, you are not in a hurry to reap the rewards. You trust the process because you trust your own core principles. This confidence is not emotional, it's structural. It stems from the repeated experience of not giving up, day after day. No drama, no announcement. You feel that something within you has stabilized. You don't need to run. You foster greater prosperity. His presence has changed, and the world responds. Not because you asked, but now there is something solid to answer with. That's the law. This is inevitable. This always works. The thought that precedes success asks no permission. He does not negotiate his existence with the environment. He does not depend on favorable circumstances to remain upright. It existed before, and it remains afterwards. This permanence creates a field that does not fluctuate easily, a field that does not adapt to every external expectation, a field that does not crumble in the face of others' doubts. That's why some people enter a room and everything changes, even without words, not because they impose something, but because they support something. Sustaining is rarer than acting. Taking action is common. Sustainability requires continuous internal alignment. Aligned thinking doesn't need to be constantly reaffirmed. He doesn't need constant reinforcement. He doesn't need to be reminded every day. It becomes a state, and states need no explanation. Most people spend their lives trying to convince the world of what they haven't yet decided internally. They talk before they stand by their actions. They promise before they actually do it. They move before they stabilize. This creates a trail of effort without substance. The thinking that precedes success creates a foundation. Ballast is what prevents collapse when something grows. Without a solid foundation, any progress becomes a burden. With ballast, weight becomes a base. True success weighs heavily. It requires internal structure. Even a misaligned mind desires to grow. But it cannot tolerate the weight of growth. She becomes anxious. In fear, self-sabotaging, aligned thinking creates tolerance. No tolerance for superficial emotional issues, but structural tolerance. You're not scared of responsibility. It doesn't become disorganized with visibility. Don't lose your composure when something goes right. You support it. And sustaining is a silent form of authority. Authority cannot be imposed. It is recognized when there is no internal noise. Internal noise always manifests itself on the river. In time, in posture, even when someone tries to hide it. The thought that precedes success is clear, not because he's naive. But why isn't it divided? He doesn't try to please two opposing sides at the same time. He doesn't try to advance and protect himself simultaneously. He chooses. And choosing is like closing internal doors. Most people are afraid of closing doors because it confuses openness with dispersion. But too many open doors drain energy, drainage focus, draining presence. Aligned thinking allows for focus. Concentration creates density. Density creates impact. Impact creates response. None of this happens by force. It happens because of consistency. The thinking that precedes success also redefines deservingness, not as a moral idea, but as an internal state. You don't constantly wonder if you deserve it. You are not justifying yourself. You don't explain yourself. You support it. Those who support it don't ask for validation. And the world responds differently to those who don't ask. Not out of arrogance, but for stability. Stability communicates capability. Capability attracts opportunities that require maturity. Misaligned thinking attracts draining situations, confusing relationships, unstable projects, invitations lacking clarity, because it's not clear to him himself. Aligned thinking attracts what matches its structure, nothing in excess, nothing out of place. This creates a less chaotic life, less dramatic, deeper. Success doesn't have to be loud to be real. He needs to be supported. The thought that precedes success doesn't rush to arrive. He remains until he is recognized. This waiting is not passive. It's firm. It's the waiting of someone who isn't getting lost while they wait. The confused mind waits anxiously. An aligned mind waits with presence. This difference changes everything. Anxiety leads to hasty decisions. Presence leads to accurate decisions. Aligned thinking leads to precision. You speak less, age less, but each move carries more weight, internal weight. This weight does not oppress. She's still. You feel more in your body. More on that later. More complete. This wholeness is perceived. The world responds to those who are whole. He always answered. Not because it's fair, but that's how reality is organized. Entire fields are attractive. Fragmented fields disperse. The thinking that precedes success creates an entire field, not perfect, but unified. You don't need to eliminate emotions. You need to integrate them. A misaligned mind fights against what it feels. An aligned mind incorporates without losing its focus. She feels fear without becoming afraid. She feels doubt without it becoming doubt. This distinction is emotional maturity. Emotional maturity sustains prosperity. Without it, any gain becomes a threat. Aligned thinking creates inner security. Internal security does not depend on external control. You don't try to control everything. You trust your ability to respond. This reduces reactivity. Less reactivity creates more quiet authority. Silent authority creates respect. Respect creates space. Space allows for growth. Everything follows the same logic. The thought process that precedes success organizes the experience of time. You don't feel like you're running late. He doesn't feel like he's lost anything. You don't feel the need to rush. You feel like you're in the right place at the right time, even when nothing has happened yet. This feeling is not an illusion, it's alignment. Alignment reduces unnecessary suffering. It doesn't eliminate challenges, but it eliminates drama. The drama arises from internal resistance. Aligned thinking reduces resistance. And where there is less resistance, there is more flow. Flow is not euphoria. It's continuity without friction. Success flows where there is no internal friction. That's the law. You don't need to learn this law. You need to stop violating her. Every time you contradict yourself, you create friction. Every time you abandon yourself, you create noise. Every time you speed up out of fear, you become disorganized. Aligned thinking corrects this naturally, without conscious effort. It becomes your default state, and when that happens, something changes permanently. You no longer need to prepare to live. You are already living. This change is profound. You don't feel like you're rehearsing. You don't feel like you're testing yourself. You feel that it is present. Presence is the soil where everything grows. Without presence, nothing takes hold. The thought process that precedes success creates that presence, and the aura of success emerges from that. Not as something mystical, but as a direct consequence of sustained consistency. Your energy changes. His posture changes. Your relationship with the world changes. No announcement, effortlessly. You don't need to say that you've changed. People can sense it. The world responds. Not because you asked, but because now there is something solid to answer with. You support more, tolerate more, receive more without losing yourself. Something within you stabilizes. You can feel it. You don't need to run. You sustain prosperity. His presence has changed. That's the law. This is inevitable. This always works. The thought that precedes success does not seek approval. He doesn't mold himself to be accepted. He doesn't adjust himself so as not to bother anyone. He exists with integrity. Integrity is not rigidity. It is wholeness. It's when there's no division between what you think, feel, and stand for. It's when there are no internal characters competing for control. It's when you don't need to become a different person as the environment changes. This state creates a solid foundation. And everything that is solid allows for construction. Most people try to build on instability. Regarding chronic doubt, about insecurity disguised as movement. This doesn't hold water, no matter how much you do. It doesn't matter how much one knows, no matter how hard you try. Misaligned thinking always exacts its price. Sometimes early, sometimes too late. But it always charges. The mindset that precedes success creates a different relationship with failure. Mistakes are not experienced as a threat to identity. It is not experienced as proof of incapacity. It is absorbed. Absorbing requires a center. Without a center, any mistake turns into an emotional collapse. With a center, the error becomes a silent adjustment. And quiet adjustments maintain continuity. Continuity is the true privilege. No visibility, momentary lack of recognition, but continuity. An aligned mind does not seek peaks. She's looking for a line that grows, which goes deeper, that which grows stronger with time. This line of work isn't exciting for those who thrive on stimulation, but it's inevitable for anyone who observes with depth. Real success doesn't impress at first. It becomes unavoidable over time. Because it doesn't depend on luck. It depends on consistency. The thinking that precedes success also redefines the relationship with control. A confused mind tries to control everything because it doesn't trust you. She's watching. She anticipates. She interferes too much. This creates constant tension. Aligned thinking does not control. He trusts in his own ability to respond. This confidence is not naivete. It's internal preparation. You know that, no matter what happens, you won't get lost. This reduces fear. Less fear leads to cleaner decisions. Clean decisions create fewer hidden consequences. Hidden consequences are what most disrupt lives. Aligned thinking reduces this noise. You don't spend your time putting out emotional fires. You don't spend your time correcting excesses. You don't spend your time explaining yourself. You live with presence. The mindset that precedes success creates an inner attitude that doesn't beg. No dispute. It's incomparable. Comparison arises from instability. Those who are aligned don't need to measure themselves against others. It is measured by its own axis. This axis is internal, and it doesn't change depending on the situation. This creates a profound sense of autonomy. Autonomy is not the same as external independence. It's emotional independence. You don't depend on the world's immediate response to feel whole. This changes how you position yourself. You don't just show up asking. You arrive available. True availability is not the same as scarcity. It's about ability, capacity to sustain. The world feels this difference, and he answers, no rush, but with consistency. Aligned thinking also changes the relationship with value. You don't try to become valuable by doing more. You become valuable by being consistent. Value is perceived when there is no contradiction, when what you transmit is stable, when there are no empty promises, when there is no exaggeration. Inner sobriety communicates more than any speech. Success comes to those who don't overdo it, because exaggeration is a sign of insecurity. Aligned thinking is sober thinking. He doesn't need to inflate himself. You don't need to sell yourself. You don't need to defend yourself. He remains. And what remains creates a reference point. References build trust. Trust creates opportunities that don't need to be forced. These opportunities don't arrive in an avalanche. They arrive with precision. And precision is a sign of alignment. The thinking that precedes success also shapes the environment. You start to realize what drains you. That's confusing. That which disperses. And naturally, it moves away, not out of rejection, but due to incompatibility. A mind that is aligned does not fight against negative environments. She simply doesn't stay in them. This choice is made silently, but powerful. The right environments amplify coherence. The wrong environments expose conflict. Aligned thinking chooses where to stand. This changes everything. You don't try to thrive just anywhere. You respect your own field. Self-respect is not just talk. It's a daily choice. And daily choices build destinies. The mindset that precedes success also changes the relationship with expectations. A confused mind lives expecting too much, or expecting little. It creates constant frustration. A mind that is aligned does not create inflated expectations. It doesn't get any smaller either. It remains open. Open without being empty. Open without getting lost. This opening is safe. Internal security allows for receiving without anxiety. Anxiety ruins what comes our way. Aligned thinking protects what comes to pass. You're not in a hurry to use it. Don't rush to prove it. Don't rush to show it. You let it settle. Settling down is a sign of maturity. Everything that settles creates a foundation. Anything rushed creates instability. The mindset that precedes success does not seek constant intensity. He seeks consistency. Intensity is tiring. Constancy builds. Most people get lost trying to live through emotional peaks, ups and downs, euphoria and frustration. This is addictive for the nervous system. Aligned thinking brings regulation. Regulation creates calm. Calm creates space. Space allows for growth. This growth is not visible at first, but it's solid. Success born from aligned thinking does not depend on external validation to continue. He doesn't need to be applauded. It doesn't need to be confirmed. He can stand on his own. And everything that endures over time becomes inevitable. Inevitability does not come from force. It comes from permanence. The thinking that precedes success creates permanence. You don't abandon your line because of temporary discomfort. You are not distracted by external noise. You stay. Staying still is not stagnation. It's loyalty. Loyalty to one's own core values. This axis organizes future decisions. You start to realize that you don't need so many choices, because the axis already filters. Fewer choices reduce anxiety. Less anxiety increases clarity. Clarity improves everything. Aligned thinking also transforms the relationship with recognition. You don't need to be seen by everyone. You need to be recognized by the people who matter. And those who matter recognize consistency. No volume, not performing. Coherence. True success isn't built on constant performances. It is built in the background of thought. What do you hold on to when no one is watching? This is the real invisible training. Aligned thinking is the result of continuous training, not as a technique, but as a choice, choosing not to become fragmented, choosing not to abandon yourself, choosing not to contradict oneself. These choices build a stable identity. A stable identity creates presence. Presence creates impact. Impact creates return. Sustained returns create prosperity. Everything follows the same logic. The thought process that precedes success needs no explanation. It is felt, and what is felt governs human decisions. Before logic, before the speech, people can tell if you're whole. They can tell you if you're stable. They can tell if you're trying too hard. Aligned thinking eliminates the trying. You don't try to be. You are. This changes the quality of everything. Conversations, decisions, invitations. You become included without asking, consulted without insisting, respected without being imposing. Not because it has changed externally, but because it aligned internally. The thought process that precedes success creates a perceptible aura. Not mystical, structural. An aura of emotional predictability. Internal stability. Silent trust. This aura doesn't attract attention, but it holds up, and those who endure remain. Success endures where there is internal structure. Without structure, he gets through. Aligned thinking builds this structure. No rush, without violence, without excessive effort. He builds from the inside out. And when that happens, something in you changes permanently. You no longer feel the need to run. You no longer feel that constant urgency. You no longer feel the fear of being left behind. You feel their presence. And presence changes everything. Your energy changes. His posture changes. Your relationship with the world changes. You support more, tolerate more, receive more without losing yourself. Something within you has stabilized. You can feel it. You don't need to run. You sustain prosperity. His presence has changed. That's the law. This is inevitable. This always works.